Now, I think we can all agree that Season 11 is a little bit light on content and things to actually do. Knowing this, I decided that I was going to make the most of it and try to use all the gear that I know I really wouldn't care about, but I thought that it would be good for me to actually just dive into some of these items that I know I wouldn't use very often or wouldn't really enjoy using. And that focus kind of is on the marksman style, gameplay. I don't really enjoy using the snipers that much. I don't really enjoy playing like a marksman, at least in Division 2. In Division 1, I did enjoy it a lot more. I especially enjoyed Sentry's Call because I could mark the enemies and give a boost to my team for headshot damage. And I loved, absolutely loved, Deadeye. Deadeye was probably one of my top 5 gear sets in Division 1. Just being able to constantly spit out crits on any marksman rifle in the game was amazing. Now, I don't really have anything against Hot Shot or Aces and Eights. I don't have anything against these kinds of gear sets personally. I mean, I don't really enjoy them that much. And for a lot of the actual uses, I don't really see them being that great. I mean, especially when you have Headhunter on your chest piece that can pretty much do everything and more than what these gear sets can do. So there's really no point in me using these gear sets, or at least that's kind of my general opinion. However, since I was using it, I decided that I should have included at least one of the new weapons, and in this instance I included the Relic named marksman rifle. Now, this is one of those fast firing, low damage marksman rifles, and I didn't really expect much out of it. I was actually just kind of using it just for whatever. But it turns out the ability to chain those headshot damage crits together over and over and over again really piqued my interest. I kind of noticed this right away, that it actually worked well, and it actually looked like combining it with Headhunter would be the perfect way to go. Now, of course, this kind of set off a chain of events of me going through and farming in Countdown over and over and over again. In fact, pretty much farmed it for about 2 or 3 days, trying to get pistols, rifles, marksman rifles, the correct chest piece, the correct backpack, and add all these different talents to my talent pool in the recalibration library. I mean, yeah, it was a lot of effort, but in the end, I think I got a pretty good idea of how I wanted to actually put this build together. Now, of course, there's not really many variations as far as if you want to get the peak, the most efficient amount of damage you can from a build like this. There's only a few variations. But I think the hardest part, once you actually understand what pieces you need to put together for the build, is just making sure that you have all of the right rolls on the gear. Now, one of the biggest problems that a lot of people run into is that this generally isn't a combination that a lot of people use, right? Most people don't use headshot damage and crit damage on all of their gear pieces. Why don't they do this? Well, because you generally need crit chance to proc crit damage, and if you don't have enough crit chance, then why are you going to waste it on all these slots, right? However, one of the previous builds that I kind of played around with before this was with the Diamondback exotic rifle. That had the ability to basically give you instant crits whenever you hit a tagged target for 5 seconds. So you could just spam out crits, and all you had to worry about was crit damage and maybe some headshot damage. And that was kind of my inspiration for what this build was going to be. Now, just to quickly go over what pieces I actually used, I had an improvised holster. That's just because most of my other pieces didn't quite fit well. I did use Fox's Prayer rolled with headshot damage. And of course, I did have Contractor's Gloves, again, rolled with headshot damage. And since this is a pistol build, who could forget having the Punch Drunk Mask, which obviously gives me that 20% pistol damage, that headshot damage, and I rolled it with crit hit damage, and of course it's got a headshot mod. Then I went with the Gift, which is a Providence backpack with perfect vigilance, and it has headshot damage, crit hit damage, and a headshot damage mod. And last but not least, my final piece of armor, which is the Chainkiller Walker and Harris named chest piece. Sadly, it has crit hit chance on it. Wish that was crit hit damage, but it does have a roll for headshot damage, headshot damage mod, and it comes with perfect Headhunter. Not that perfect Headhunter is really any better than just regular Headhunter, so you don't really need that piece. And then of course I was using the Prophet named Revolver, which gives me that perfect determined. I was trying to figure out if I could use claws out on this build. Sadly, I don't have anything that even resembles a good enough piece. I would need headshot damage on it and be able to roll weapon damage on it. I don't have that. Maybe it'll be something I try in the future. Who knows? I don't really think it'll be that big of a difference, but I do actually want to try it just to see if it is much of a difference at all. Other thing is, and not that I suggest anyone rush out and do this, because it doesn't really make much sense if you're using this on like a sniper build or something like that, but I did get the Prophet hitting for 26 million with the Gunslinger holster. Yeah, it's not something you probably really need to do, but I just thought it would be interesting to show you guys that. And also I figured I'd mention, if the Prophet doesn't do enough damage for you, there's also the D50, which I got to hit for 13 million. Now look, I like this build a lot. You guys that have been with this channel a long time, you know that I love pistol builds, I love shield builds. I just kind of enjoy those, and I've enjoyed those since Division 1. However, it is very important to know that, if you are in a group, or if you are planning to play in a group, this is not the kind of build for you. And I say this because, obviously, if you've played in a group before, you know that the enemy health pool goes up a lot. So, of course, if you are relying on a build to one-shot everything, and you can no longer one-shot things, then you're going to run into a lot of problems. Sure, I think this could still probably one-shot most reds or purples in like a two-man group, but I think at that point, the golds are going to start being able to tank your hits. Now, look, I'm not exactly sure what point they get over the 12 or 13 million damage that your pistol can do. Maybe the pistol might be able to max out at about 14 million on just a regular use, kind of scenario, regular use scenario, not including like the gunslinger holster or something ridiculous. I'm just saying that on the average actual shot, you should be able to get maybe close to 14 million. I think that's probably about peak pistol damage. Would this be something that I use on legendary 4-man? No, no, I don't think you're going to be doing enough damage for it to work well. And I could just imagine how annoying it would be trying to take out Chungas or Warhounds with this. It just probably would not be good enough for that. I don't even think it would actually take off the helmet of a Chunga. It probably just wouldn't even really phase them at all. So this is definitely not something I would use for that. It's kind of a solo, fun to play with farmer type pistol build for, I would say, heroic solo. If you're playing multiplayer, or if you're playing in a group with like challenging or hard difficulty, yeah, I think this will get through it fine. If you're playing on heroic, maybe 2-man, 4-man, I don't know. I mean, last time I was trying to play heroic control points with 4 people, those enemies were so freaking spongy. Like, it was ridiculous. But anyway, that's not to say that you couldn't use it at all. I mean, you still can chain some of these hits together, and you can kind of wear some enemies down before you really start to just kind of pop them off. And that could be kind of where you fit in, right? Once your teammates have kind of knocked off, 50% of their armor, you can take your shot and just knock them out. Or, you could kind of prep a bunch of enemies and then, go for the coup de grace with the final hits. But honestly, I think the fun part of this kind of build is just the novelty of one-tapping everything on the screen. If it becomes more work than that, if you actually have to put an effort into it, I think the problem is just, you'd rather use a AR build, or you'd rather use something else, So I think the novelty here is the one tap of a pistol, and if it goes past that, like, you can't do it anymore because you're playing on legendary, then it's not as fun. But anyway, I've obviously talked about the pistol and how much damage it's putting out, but there are other weapons that can get this determined talent on them. Obviously, it's, the marksman rifles and the regular rifles. Now, if you're looking at the actual, I guess, damage proposition from each weapon, the White Death is going to be the strongest marksman in the game that can get determined on it. and that's because it comes with the highest base damage of the marksman rifles because it is a M44, and it comes with 137% headshot damage. So yes, it is the strongest of the marksman rifles if you were looking for the highest amount of damage for a determined Headhunter build. Now personally, I've kind of been playing with a custom M44, and obviously it's not as high in terms of damage, but I do like the fact that it actually has a magazine, so I don't have to sit there and load round after round if I mistakenly hit reload during combat. And it's just one of those annoying things that I do like the high damage marksman rifles, but I do hate waiting for them to load, so I did go with a M44 version of the same thing. Now the other side of this is that there's also plenty of rifles that could be used, most notably the 1886 lever action. Now this is the strongest rifle in the game. It is the most damage as far as base damage goes. Now of course it does have the lowest RPM and only a 5-round magazine. However, while in a lot of ways this could be considered inferior to one of the M44s, I mean obviously it does have a little bit faster RPM, but obviously damage and everything else, and the fact that it doesn't have a scope and it doesn't have the headshot damage attribute, those are negatives against it. And a lot of people might be like, well, why would I even use this? Well, there are a few reasons why you would, and I'm probably going to have to actually play around with that with other builds just to show you what's going on. It is something that I'm keeping an eye on, and it does still do pretty decent damage for this kind of build. Overall, what I can say is that between the various marksman rifles and pistols, what you can roughly expect is about 20 million from a standard marksman rifle build. You can expect somewhere between 16 and 18 for a standard rifle build, and you can expect about 10 to 12 for a very good pistol build. And this is of course if you are using Determined, Vigilance, and Headhunter. If you're trying to go with other options, I know I spent some time playing with the Ninja Bike, I spent some time playing with the Memento, trying to work out different combinations for this to make it work, and truthfully the highest amount of damage came from Vigilance, and you got to use Headhunter, and of course obviously the whole thing's built around being Determined, so you're kind of stuck with those three things. Everything else is basically just trying to nickel and dime as much damage as you can get. But yeah, anyway, I will be continuing to test out some things and to make some updates. And who knows, maybe I will find that kind of magic sweet spot for builds that I really like. And I'll let you guys know if I do. But thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.